Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for accepting my presentation today, and congratulations for successful Congress. Well, I'll speak something different from managing or treatment of DVT. I'll speak about the prophylaxis, something as important as the treatment as well. The story starts in 1990 by Berkovic, who managed to report his first report about the importance of DVT prophylaxis in hospitalized patients. He mentioned in his reports a high risk of death in hospitalized patients. This risk starts 10% in very simple procedure like inguinal hernia and increased by importance of surgery to reach about 75% in orthopedic cases. So, of course, this triggers a national campaign in UK in order to understand how come that the patient goes for surgery in hospital and die from another thromboembolic disease. So the national report was published in 1993 in UK and stated that 25,000 patients died in the year 1991 to 1992 in UK hospitals. So this triggers also a national campaign to try to detect which are the patients who are at risk in order to prevent them from this horrible death, going to the hospital to be treated from something and die from thromboembolic disease. So if you see the literature, several physicians try to find the risk assessment score like Caprini, Padua, Vienna, and they have listed this risk into a kind of scoring system according to its importance. The less important about 1 point and the most important up to 5 points. Caprini was the most famous and most widely spread score because he succeeded in 2005 to publish his electronic calculator. You can put the risk factors and you get the result about the number of points, the importance of the risk. And the most important thing, he indicates what kind of prophylaxis is indicated and for how long. So did we really achieve our goal? Because it became the standard of the quality, of course. It detects how many patients and what are the risks of these patients. And it gives electronic form, which makes the filling of the form very easy. But we expect normally to have protected all of our patients. Unfortunately, this is not true because when we see the actual status, we have to go as a reference to the publication of Geertz in 2001, who said that most of the patients developing thromboembolic disease in hospitalized surgical patients are asymptomatic. Nearly 25% asymptomatic distal DVT, 7% proximal DVT, which means in total 32% of the patients develop DVT are asymptomatic. The symptomatic DVT represent only 6%, and if we calculate the non-fatal pulmonary embolism 1-2%, and the fatal pulmonary embolism up to 0.7%. Why we have to start by this? Because the other publications, mainly De La Valle has published a multiple comprehensive study about the studies published on this subject, and he found that we reduced the incidence of symptomatic cases to 2.5%, it was 7%, and the asymptomatic patients of DVT reduced up to 6.4% from 32%, which means that we succeeded to have a good benefit from only asymptomatic patients to be very remarkable. Another studies has been controlled, the placebo study, found that the potential reduction is 50 to 6%. This means that in Europe and United States, we succeeded after 20 years of risk assessment to protect only 50 to 6% of our patients. If you want to know what's happening in the other part of the world, you will find a very interesting review published by Onwuzu in 2023, last year, stating that in Africa, in his country, Nigeria, only 6% of the patients had the right to or succeeded to have the prophylaxis, and 40% of hospitalized patients did not even have the opportunity to get the prophylaxis. So what are the obstacles? The obstacles are the limited awareness and difficulties of recalling the guidelines, as most of the prophylaxis are performed not only by vascular surgeons, but some gynecologists, general surgeons, and other specialties. There is a confusion about the duration of the treatment and do we have to ambulate or not. There is a resistance to change also from some physicians, and there is some concerns raised about the side effects of anticoagulation and the management of bleeding or renal failure. And finally, we have a lack of outcome follow-up in order to see if we really succeeded to protect our patients or not. So what do we need more? I have tried to understand a little bit what we can do more, and I find that we need a friendly algorithm according to the guidelines to be unified for all practice. And this is the algorithm that came out. You see on the left side here, there is the scoring system of Caprini, and above, in the table above, Fortunately, I don't have. Anyway, well, you see on the left side, you have the scoring system. On the table up, you have the degree of the scoring, the risk of the DVT, the prophylaxis needed, and finally the guidelines about the duration. And I included also in this algorithm the complication of the low molecular weight heparin and the complication of the elastic stocking. Why? Because if you follow, you start from the orange rectangle. If you have your patient have one or two risk factors, only he does not need low molecular weight prophylaxis, and he can be protected only by ambulation and elastic stocking. If he has more than two factors, then he is candidate for low molecular weight prophylaxis. So we go to the left and we see if there is contraindication or not. Usually this is missing in the scores that we are using because we do it systematically and we do not think if the patient has contraindication or not. If he does any contraindication for low molecular weight, he joined the group of the elastic stocking. And if does not have any contraindication, so we proceed to the next step. It's verification of his renal condition. If the renal condition is well and creatinine clearance more than 30, so proceeds to the selective dose, tenzaparin and enoxaparin. In UAE, where I practice, we don't have tenzaparin, but we have enoxaparin. And think also to measure the platelets count, because if there is less than 100,000 or decrease in 50% in the following week, we have to reconsider it. So if the patient has creatinine clearance less than 30 but above 15, we can use still tenzaparin. And if it is less than 15, we can go to the elastic stocking. And here on the right side, you see the contraindication of the elastic stocking. And if there is any contraindication in such condition, we can use the sequential pneumatic compressive device. So the advantage of this algorithm is easy to use and fast to use. It contains the management according to the guidelines. It helps to detect the possible contraindication for management that we usually forget. It guides management in case of renal impairment. It guides to select the suitable dose and the duration of the treatment. But the most important thing, in my opinion, it unifies the management by all physicians. The guy who comes for me, he will be treated as if he goes to Dr. X or Dr. Y, according to the most recent guidelines. And finally, we can have an electronic form of this algorithm in order to have a proof of effectiveness. It can be used in order to understand statistically the physician compliance, the ratio of contraindication, the percentage of failure despite of successful prophylaxis. Thank you very much for your attention.